Let's get into one of my all-time favorite passing concepts in the game in spread for verticals. And in particular, I'll show you this simple setup that you can use against really anything the defense throws at you. What's really nice about it is that you don't really need to concern yourself with what coverage it is pre-snap. Just, make your progressions and throw to the first open guy. And since we're running straight up the field, we can get big chunks of yards before the pressure even has time to come in. And the progressions are designed to be quick too, so you don't need to spend too much time for your receivers to get open. It's just bang, 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 throw, and do it all over again. And since the adjustments are quick, you can often catch your opponent off guard before they have time to make their proper adjustments, and you can make some big plays. So in this video, we'll go over how to use it against the meta double Mabel stuff, since I think it will still be the go-to at the start of Madden 22, and who knows, maybe even beyond then. But we'll go over how it works also so well against all these other coverages. The one thing I'll say before we get started though is that it takes some time to practice to know which guys are going to be open and when and how to throw each of those different routes. What I actually like to do is go into practice mode with something on in the background to listen to, and then I'll put on random defensive plays and just run this over and over again. And I actually think it's pretty fun, not to mention you're actually building your ability to run this play as well. And then what I'll do is I'll try not to look at the defense pre-snap. I might even put the defense in press alignment or do some random shading. While I look away, I'll snap it and then I'll look back and then start immediately going through my progressions with a fresh set of eyes. So in the end, what you do is you get so comfortable with it because you've seen all sorts of different looks all many times over, and you're just used to hitting progression, throw, progression, throw, and so on. So with all that being said, we'll go ahead and get started here. So we'll just do the Mike Blitz 3-3-3-5 wide meta. Unfortunately, because this is next gen, I can't do any of the coaching adjustments. It's really a shame that that's not in the game. So I'll do my best to kind of simulate that. But by and large, that meta stuff where people are putting really deep flats doesn't really matter here because we're essentially hitting the areas that it vacates. So we'll go ahead and do that, Mike Blitz 3. And where I'm at here is shotgun 2x2 spread for verticals, which you can find really in many different playbooks, maybe even all playbooks. But this particular one is Philadelphia Eagles. So before we get into it, we'll just briefly go over the setup and just briefly introduce the progressions as well. So I already went over it. It's shotgun spread 2x2. You can also do this at a pistol spread 2x2 or single back spread 2x2, but you can't really do it nearly as well out of doubles or ace or anything like that, or even a stack 2x2. I think 4 verticals really works best out of 2x2 spread, and I think it's even better than bunch 4 verticals or trips 4 verticals. I really think this is our best option because you have at least 2 good options to either side. And the user can't really, like in trips, he can kind of cheat over to the trip side because the solo receiver can't do too much on his own. So I think 2x2 really gives you the best options here. And again, because we're going right up the field, it's a quick way to get big chunks of yards. And especially even close to the red zone, I think it's a good time to hit it directly up the seam and towards the touchdown. So that's the formation. The setup is really simple. Because it's symmetrical here, we don't really need to think too much about it. In this particular case, it is still 11 personnel. We do have a tight end here, so it's not personnel symmetrical. But there are some that you can find where you can actually put a receiver there. In this case, it's not a big deal. Here, if I have the chance, I'll set the back to the field. But I don't think it's a big deal. I think if it's flipped and he's set to the boundary, I think it's fine too. But if I have a choice, I'll just set him to the field. But if you're doing like a hurry up offense type of thing and he ends up in the boundary, I think that's totally fine. So the alignment, you don't need to worry too much about. And like I already said, when you're looking at coverages and things like that, I try not to look at that as much as I can. Just let the progressions do the work for me. And then in terms of the adjustments off of this, it's really simple. It's just 2 adjustments. You don't need any sort of hot route master or anything like that. It's just put the boundary receiver, in this case it's X. I'm going to put him on a comeback. And I'll also put the halfback on a halfback option route. just like that. And that's it. 2 adjustments. You can get that right away and just snap that right away and get going and, catch your opponent off guard. Don't have to wait too much. Just, bang, 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 go, go, go. Why I like the comeback route instead of, you've probably seen me talk about this 10-yard out route quite a bit. I actually like the comeback a lot better on next gen because this 10-yard out struggles against man coverage, whereas the comeback is really good against man coverage. It's also still good against zone. As you'll see, it's actually good almost against every zone. It might actually be the best route in next gen Madden. There's very few route or coverages that actually are able to cover it well. It's a quicker hot route, right? You don't need to do the out route and then the smart route. It's just one adjustment. That's that. It hits a little bit deeper up the field, which gets you a few more yards, which obviously is really good. And then you don't have to rely on it being like 1st and 10, 2nd and 10 type of thing. You can get this depth from anywhere. If you're 3rd and 2 and you're trying to smart route or out route, you obviously can't do this. So the comeback is really much better. And then again, you'll have the halfback on the halfback option. You can leave him into block, or you can even leave him on this check and release here. But I like the check down. I won't go over it just yet. You'll see it later down the road. But what I like about the halfback option here is that if it's man, he'll get open. If it's zone, he'll sit down. But unlike, this check and release or like a curl or something, he'll actually find a sweet spot away from a spy. So if your opponent's putting in a spy, which many, many people do, if it's just a simple curl or a simple check and release check down, he's just going to sit right beside or right in front of the spy, and you're not going to be able to throw that. But if you do the halfback option, particularly if he's set to the field, he finds this really nice piece of grass that really no zones find a way to cover. And then from there, the progressions are really, really simple. So all I'm doing is I'm looking field to boundary. So I'm looking at the field, this fade right here. He's essentially just because most people will press, right? Most good players will press whatever coverage that press man, press zone, whatever it is, they'll press. So what I'll do, I'll look to see if he gets open, like if it's cover 2 or if it's press and he beats the press. I'll quickly check right there if he's open. Most times he isn't, but I think it's great to have that there because sometimes people do crazy things, and especially if you're running quick and they mess up their adjustments, sometimes you can catch that guy off guard and hit it deep for a big score. So I do like to look at that right away. If that's not there, then I'll look at this seam. If that's not there, I'll look at this seam. If that's not there, I'll look at this comeback, which if these 3 routes aren't open, chances are, like a really, really high chance that this comeback's going to be open. And by the time you get to him, he'll be ready to throw that ball. So you don't have to wait around too much. It's just, check this guy, check this guy, check this guy, check this guy. And then if all that is broken down somehow, you have this really nice halfback option route. And then, of course, you can scramble too, but, I don't think that comes up too often. So we'll go ahead and show you right away. Again, this is tough because I don't have the zone adjustments. But what I'll do is I'll do cloud flats. I will do hard flats on these outside linebackers. And then we will, we'll spy this. You have a zone and a spy in the middle, essentially. And so what will happen here, again, I'm looking at this guy. If he's open, I'll throw it, which in this case he won't be. But if he's not open, we look right down the seam, and you see this big chunk of yards to the tight end. For easy gain. Now, if you want, you can change this guy's route, this seam guy's route, just to a simple vertical right here. I do like the option route, as we'll see later down in this video, but what happens against cover 3 match, even if they do any sort of shading, he will break it off into the post for some reason, as you see there, and then you're not able to get as many yards. But if you do straight up vertical right here and they're not protecting the seam, you can find a situation where you get even more yards because he's not breaking it side again. Now, if that's covered, so most likely that will be covered because the user themselves is going out there to cover that. So we'll just simulate that by doing that. And again, we have the spy right here. So if that is covered, and let me just go ahead and press this again right here, we simply look towards the other seam. Now, the seam is a little bit tighter over here because you have this deep safety right there. But if you get good at it, and if you do have gunslinger and a decent amount of throw power, you see those are not open, but you can still find a little pocket there, possession, catch that, and get 20 easy yards. Okay, at this point, because you've already hit a couple of different options, your opponent might look towards doing other coverages, but let's just, for the sake of this video, let's get a little bit crazy with these coverages, and let's set it up like normal, except what we're gonna do, we will man this guy up so we don't hit him down the seam, and then we'll also man this guy up so we don't hit him down the seam there. But once they try to take away these seams, they can only do that by taking away some of these deep zone defenders or any of the other defenders, essentially. So what's so great about this play is that it's really hard to defend all of these routes at the exact same time. So in this case, we don't have the first route, the second, the third, but then we come back to the comeback here, and again we get a big chunk of yards. And one thing to note, although I try to keep this as simple as possible for myself, if they are doing something like this, like I showed you in the last one, where you notice that they're trying to take the seam away by manning up that guy, well, all that means is that now you don't have a drifter in the deep right or to the deep zone, deep sideline to the field, essentially. So what you can do, this is one of the only adjustments that I'd recommend here, is just change this guy to a comeback. And I'd do that just like if for sure he's running he's still in this cover 3 that you're not going to beat over the top anyway. And if he's taking those zones away, well, then we can come back to this comeback over here, right? And we can hit that there as well. But that's just a little option that you can have if you want it. Otherwise, let's go back here to our regular progression. So again, we're saying he's manning up this guy, and this user now, let's say he's taking away this seam and he's allowing this deep defender to take away the comeback over there. But all that means now is that there's nobody in the middle of the field. So he's taking away all the vertical routes, but then that just means you have this halfback check down right here. And if you have a good back, you can still get 10, 15, 20 yards. And then going back to why the halfback option is so nice is that if they even try to take this another crazy step further, where they're manning up this guy's over here, this guy's in a spy, and maybe instead of a hard flat here, he mans him up so that he doesn't give away that little soft spot in the zone. Well, the halfback option is smart enough to know that he's in man coverage and he'll actually break that outside, and then you can beat that outside linebacker for, again, another big chunk of yards. And even if they're, really, really frustrated, so let's say we go back to this thing right here, and, they want to make sure there's a flat defender here, and, they're really frustrated, and they're doing this, what I like to call the kind of cloud of frustration right here, where they give up a deep zone there, trying to bait you, trying to, get you to throw the comeback or something like that. But that's why I really like always having this deep route right here and having that my first progression, because if you ever come across something crazy like that, you'll see that, and then in the off chance that it happens, you'll be there for an easy score. So that's all well and good for the meta, like this double Mabel type of stuff where everybody's expanding to the sidelines and you can hit them right up the seam where they're weak. But what about when they're switching things up? And 3-3-5 wide, I think, is in particularly a good formation to disguise things, right? You have the cover 4 that looks just like this. You have the cover 2 that just looks just like this, and it can be really tricky. And even this play on its own, you can run it stock to be match coverage, which runs a little bit differently than the main setup right here. But again, you're just looking at your progressions, and one of these guys will always be open. So in this case, we don't have the fade, we don't have any of the seams, but we do have the comeback route right here for 15, 16 yards. And of course, that's the same thing pretty much for cover 1. Cover 3 match against 4 verticals is pretty much cover 1. And then we can go to just regular old cover 3 right here, cover 3 buzz. And what I like about this running the comeback into the boundary here, I think this is why it's really, really important. I explained at the beginning that the comeback should always be on the boundary, but I didn't really explain why, is that just against regular old cover 3, where that curl flat defender is engaged with the seam defender to not allow those free releases up the seam and those free big chunks of yards that we're using. He doesn't do a good job of covering comebacks to the boundary for whatever reason. And so you'll see just this big chunk of space right here, assuming we don't get the sack. But let's just go ahead and rerun that here. Again, cover 3 buzz, 2 quick adjustments. We're ready to go right here. We see the curl flat defender playing with the seam, and we got even more room down the sideline right here. But again, just like we were doing with the meta double Mabel type of stuff, if they're running just basic cover 3 right here and they're trying to take away that comeback with, say, the old school kind of cloud flat type of things, or even just regular spot drop zone adjustments, we're going to see that, right? Because we're hitting all of our routes. We're not, focusing, narrowing down on that comeback route. We're looking at everything. And in this case, we have a couple of seam routes running completely free, in this case, to the left side instead of the right, and then we have ourselves a touchdown. Okay, that's all well and good. We did the double Mabel stuff. We did the cover 3 match, which is pretty much the same as cover 1, and we did the cover 3. But what about too high stuff? Is this only good against cover 3? But it's good against everything as well. So let's go Tampa 2 right here. Again, we're gonna look at our first read, our little kind of alert or whatever you want to call it, and what you'll notice, if it is cover 2, the regular cover 2 where a corner is getting a jam on that guy, you'll notice right away there's no other animation, like any man press animation that looks like it. And once you see it right away, you'll know it's cover 2, and you don't need to look at anything else. You just wait for him to clear a little bit, and then you can hit it all the way down the sideline for 30 yards. So usually against cover 2, that's all you'll need. But if you have a user that's here and he's aggressive down low, or he's doing something silly, you can peek at these routes right here. Like this guy will convert to a post in the middle of the field, and if nobody's covering him in terms of the mid read, if he's blitzing or if the user's in no man's land, you can hit that for a big play. And actually, I'll just show that right here. So it doesn't happen too often, but let's say the user's kind of in no man's land right here. You can hit either of these two guys for a big chunk of yards. But we know, usually what it's going to be is, a deep third pole defender right there. You have the 2 vertihooks, which will likely be one of the user defenders. You'll have a spy in the middle of the field. And of course, in this case, you would still take the fade to the field. That will still be open for you. But if for whatever reason, they adjust that to man coverage or something like that, and then they run with these 2 seam guys, and then the comeback is a little bit iffy, then you always have this nice little option route from the running back and get at the very least 15 yards. Sorry, not 15, more like 5 or 10. If you can catch it and turn out field, then it's 15 or 20 or so. Anyway, that's zone coverage. Let's start going to man coverage a little bit right here. So nothing changes here, same adjustments, same progression. You're going to look at this guy. Does he win his press matchup? If he does, and there's no safety help over the top, you can go ahead and lob that over the top for, your one play score, whatever that is. But if he doesn't win, then again, you're looking at your progressions. The seam guys are likely not going to be open. This post does get open, but, often your user is going to drift underneath it. But that's good because there's 2 other routes that we want to take him away from, namely the comeback route and the little halfback option route right here. So the comeback sometimes gets pressed in a weird way, but usually, you can go ahead and throw that before he makes the break and get your 15, 20 yards. So I think that's really, really an underrated route, particularly in next gen against man coverage. I really hope you guys use the comebacks more because, they're there. You can use them whenever you want, and against man coverage, you're really going to be good, whether they're doing a hard press or a soft press. And then if for whatever reason you don't like that, like maybe this safety is drifting underneath it, then you always have the running back right here. And if he has good route running or one of those abilities, he's always going to win, and you can always catch that and turn that upfield. Cover 0 works pretty much the same way. Again, we're going to be doing the same adjustments. But, when you do come against cover 0, usually it's pretty obvious. So I would, either block the running back, or in some cases, it's even better just to leave him in this check release right here. Because the check release, what it'll do is he will stay in the block. But you know, if you block the running back, and if you see right here, the safety to the boundary is manned up on him, and if the running back stays into block, that safety will go into a deep zone and he'll just get in the way of everything. But if you stay on a check release, he'll come into a spy instead, and that means you just have more room to pass with. So in this case, we'll look here. Do we get a win? Not really, but you see with this, we get this post route nicely open. Now, obviously, you know, if there is a user involved, they'll drift underneath that post, so that might not be open. But if you have an actual receiver here instead of a tight end, you can wait for that to develop up the field a lot more. So you don't have to throw that right in the middle of the field. You can wait for that to develop down the sideline and down kind of the pylon area, and just throw that over the top for even bigger yardage. But in this case, it's a tight end. We can't really do much there. But otherwise, you know, you do always have this comeback route right here. So again, throw it kind of right before his break. You know, in that case, just possession catch that and live to see another day. And not too different than cover 0 is cover 4 quarters right here. And things are pretty much the same here. Just come back to the boundary, halfback option right here. We look to see if we have a win to the field on that press. If not, we just look at our seam guy. So we don't really have a win here, but the seam guy converts to a post, and we can go ahead and throw that with an outside pass lead, and we get a big chunk of yards. But in all honesty, that can be a little bit tricky sometimes, because it's not always the most obvious thing to see, especially since you don't see a lot of cover 4 quarters. So immediately, if you see that your seam guy is capped, you might have a tendency to move on to your next read. But over time, you'll kind of know when to see cover 4 quarters or cover 4 palms, and then to know that you should just stick with it, because your guy will convert to a post and he will beat that safety one-on-one. In particular, if they're doing any sort of shading, so that he will get a free release. So it's even quicker right here. And again, you still have the bad matchup because it's a tight end, but even he will usually win that. But if you don't really want to play around with that, again, you have the comeback is always going to be good. The halfback option is actually not so great in this case, but you know, you do have a one-on-one matchup on the outside, just like in man coverage, and go ahead and throw that. So that's pretty much that. The one last thing I'll leave you with is kind of a word of caution at the very end. I think the one thing that can be tricky is like cover 4 without matching. So right here, I'm just going to go ahead and protect the sticks. So cover 4 without matching means that, you know, this guy won't get beat over the top. You have 2 safeties to defend the seams. And if it's cover 4 without matching, your seam guy will not convert to a post, so you won't have that option. The halfback option can be easily covered by the user in this case. And the comeback route, if they set their zones appropriately, you can't really throw that. I won't go into it in too much detail here, but there is still a way that you can throw this comeback route right here. You just need kind of a high point pass, and then sometimes you can toe tap that inbounds. But if you're seeing a lot of spot drop cover 4, I just in general stay away from this. But otherwise, I think it's really just a fantastic, simple passing play that you can run really against anything, and be confident that you'll find at least one guy open for a nice big chunk of yards. Anyway, that's it for this one, guys. I hope you liked it. This has really kind of been a passion play for me throughout pretty much all of the Maddens that I've been playing with. And I think this has kind of culminated to really my favorite version of that. I think it's simple, and I think it works against everything, and it's great. You just need to really take it to practice mode a little bit, and just to develop the kind of intuition and the sense of which things are going to be open and when. But other than that, that's it for this one, and I'll see you guys in the next one.